Welcome everybody to our 2014 Parenting and Games Talk, Leveling Up Your Kid, Parenting Through Games and Game Design. My name is Jason Weiser of Ya Play Games, and I'm thrilled to host this amazing group. We are a panel of game creator parents who enjoy using game design to mess with our kids' lives in all sorts of interesting ways. Most of these are well-intentioned. Some are even meant to address the bigger challenges most parents face of how to keep our child safe and happy, or sometimes at least occupied, and how to inspire them to learn useful skills and compassion, or sometimes at least not to hit. One thing I think everyone on this panel would agree is that parenting is exhausting and hard and frequently all-consuming. And the thought of trying to come up with an entire game scenario to help our kids manage eating, or homework, or fill in the blank a million other things that we are concerned about for them every day, coming up with anything extra often feels impossible. We frequently turn to each other for ideas and games, and we wanted to bring these ideas to PAX. Because even when it is Sunday here, and we are all exhausted, and our feet hurt, and we might even have picked up a pox, gaming still makes us happy, and we believe game-oriented parenting makes things better in our lives as parents. We have 6 lightning talks for you today with 7 amazing speakers. Naturally, I rolled dice to decide the order, and without further ado, I would like to welcome to the podium, with a short bio, our first speaker. Irena Mandel is a veteran UX and UI designer. She started at Blizzard shortly after the release of World of Warcraft, where she was a major contributor to Vanilla WoW, The Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King before moving east for Kurt Schilling's 38 Studios. Where she was lead UI designer on Copernicus and also had 2 children who are now 2 and 4 years old. Please give a round of applause for Irena Mandel.
My name is Irena Mandel, as Jason just said. I am a UX designer, but at home I'm a CX designer. Just to give you a little bit of background, when I worked on WoW, I met this guy who happened to be the lead designer on the WoW TCG. We would play WoW every once in a while, but I was a human mage, he was a dwarf cleric, or dwarf priest, sorry, EQ days coming back. But somehow we got together and we made these little things. I think they got the dwarf genes from me. Connor and Katie, those are our little munchkins. One is shorter than the other. The other one is really, really short. But we're going to focus mostly on Connor because Katie's a little bit too young to get a lot of our mind manipulation. So this is Connor in his natural state. And the real parenting challenges that we have are, one, these kids are parented by children. We love toys. I love to buy our kids toys. Every time we go into what we call the Red Ball store, any guesses what that is? Target. Yeah. Red Ball. I always wanted to buy toys for my kids. Playing doesn't seem like it's a challenge, but there's actually some little detailed stuff to get through in that. We'll get to that later. Behavior. Does anybody have any problems with behavior in kids? That's what I thought. And then sleep. I'm going to be under the table later taking a nap. So let's start off with toys. This is our playroom on a good day. You can't see the other side where there are bins and bins full of toys, all organized because I'm OCD. But there's just toys everywhere. You've got Christmas, you've got birthdays. You just get inundated with all sorts of plastic. And the kids eventually just don't know what, they play with a toy for 5 minutes and they throw it to the side. So one of the things that we used to do was we would give our kids toys on demand, like, hey mama, I want that toy. And it's probably a bad idea, just whenever your kid asks for a toy, to give it to them. So we came up with this other system where, okay, every Friday you can get a toy. And that didn't necessarily teach our kid anything other than to say, is it Friday yet? Is it Friday yet? Is it Friday yet? So there was nothing really built into that would help our kid get along. So the game designers in us came up with a chart. Really unique in parenting, charts. So there's this idea of our kid would get fixated on toys, and they want a specific toy. So we'd say, okay, that toy, you've got 5 boxes. Wait every day. We're not going to tie it to behavior because that just makes him do behavior only to get a toy. But every day you get a box filled in, and then once they're all completely filled in, then you get the toy. It gave us a lot of really cool things. It gave us the idea of teaching him patience. It also gave him the idea of building value. We could scale the number of boxes based on the size of the expense of the toy. So it was, just a silly thing to help him kind of build anticipation. And then for that, in this case, 8 days that it took to get to the Superman robot, he really could anticipate it and enjoy it, so that he, once he was done with it 5 minutes after he actually got it, he actually had the week ahead of time to want it. And of course, the minute he got it, he took it into a sandbox and broke it. So this is Katie. She's got some interesting proclivities. So the next top thing is play. Play seems it's pretty straightforward. We like to play with our kids. We're all gamers. We love to get kind of deep and dirty with our kids when it comes to playing games, coloring, doing everything. Because again, we're all like kids too, kids ourselves. The problem is that there's a big difference between a play that a kid would do versus what play parents do. And the thing that we're used to is directed play, but what a kid really needs is self-led play. Playing with kids is the ultimate improv game. You've got to always say yes, regardless of what it is that they offer you. Mom, you're a superhero, you're a robot, and you are an alligator. Sure, whatever. And you just play it out with them. But once you give them that agency, it actually turns around when you ask them to do something later on, that they're willing to play along too. If you model yes to everything to them, they will model yes back at you when you ask them for, could you please pick up your Duplos? Another danger of directed play is interactive toys. They basically tell you how to play with them. There's a difference between a Spider-Man figure and the Spider-Man figure that has all sorts of phrases and shoots webs. The Spider-Man figure, the kid can't make up its own voice for him. My son doesn't tell him what he says, he just repeats back what that Spider-Man figure says, as opposed to the standalone one that doesn't have any sort of electronics. He makes up all sorts of crazy things and actually makes him be R2-D2's best friend. And also parental involvement. It's dangerous to sit there and color for them, because then they're not going to want to jump in and do it themselves. They'll be intimidated by how well you color, however bad it is. My husband just draws stick figures. But even Connor at 4 can't really draw stick figures, and then he just throws it out and says, no, I don't want to do it, and moves on to the next thing. If you let him do it himself, he'll get a lot more creative with it, and just because Rapunzel's hair is purple doesn't mean that it's wrong. And that way you'll get unexpected results. And the kids just are ingenious. Our Duplo collection is basically a gun manufacturing machine or a spaceship manufacturing lab. It's awesome. So that kind of boils down to a basic philosophy of parenting, of playful parenting. You can take this into kind of behavior control and discipline. It's an awesome thing. Instead of, kind of the authoritative parenting approach of telling your kid, you have to listen to me, or listen to me or else, or timeouts, things like that, you can throw those all out the window and replace them with things like, I'll race you upstairs to the bath, I'm going to win. Of course, you let them win, but they will race you. They'll be self-motivated to get upstairs. Or you can play little games like, can anybody in the house find your shoes? Or, or who can put their shoes on first? Suddenly you create this realm of competitiveness. And it's just like in gaming, you create this inner drive within themselves to beat you. They'll be really good at sports later too. One of my favorites was something that I did this morning, turned everything into a song. My son was stealing a brand new birthday toy, because it was my daughter's birthday yesterday. And he was stealing it from her and rolling it around, and she really wanted it. She was crying, so I was like, Connor, give it back, she wants her toy back. But songs are incredibly powerful tool. It got him laughing. And there's another song that I have to teach you. If you haven't heard of it, some of you with preschoolers might have. It goes, clean up, everybody do your trick. It's magic. It's magic. I don't know what it is, but they're hypnotized. Another generic one, if you don't know what to do, you can just say, I have a quest. Make a little exclamation point over your head so that, they'll just come running to you what, Mama, what? It's time to eat dinner. And then there's my favorite. It has to be my favorite. It's basically, the idea of everyone, whoever wants ice cream, raise one hand. Whoever wants ice cream, raise 2 hands. And then it goes on. Anyone who wants ice cream, raise 2 hands and 1 leg. Now 2 hands and 2 legs. And then you end up. So anyway, there's some resources for positive parenting and playful parenting. If you guys have any interest in learning even more tactics, super, super helpful. It's completely changed the way and the dynamic that I have with my kids, and I'm yelling a lot less, and it's pretty awesome. And then with sleep, I have no idea. Please, if anybody has any advice, I'll be over here at the end of the panel. Thank you.
Next up, we have Al Reed, the founder and CEO of Demiurge Studios here in the Boston area, creators of Shoot Many Robots, and developers on Marvel Puzzle Quest, Dark Reign, and many, many others. Al holds a BS in technical writing from Carnegie Mellon and is the father of a 3-year-old.
Hello, everybody. There's like an echo here. I usually don't need a microphone, so wave your hands if I'm too loud. This is my boy, Walt. He always looks usually like that, actually. One of the things that I think we're working on is trying to get things a little bit happier. And as I was becoming a parent, I was really struggling because I watch kids with parents, and I watched my own parents raise me, and I also watch all these things, and I'm terrible at all of them, it turns out. And so I had to turn to the things that I do know, which is mostly video games. So this is all about everything I know about parenting I learned from game design. So the first thing is that children are noobs. If you ever watch somebody play a first-person shooter for the first time, like give it to your grandma or whatever, and she picks up the controller, it does not go very well at all. They walk into walls, they can't point at things, they have trouble picking up weapons, and I think you have to understand that your children are also new to the world. So the first lesson is the FTUI, for those of you who are in the world of free-to-play, is the first-time user experience. So we go to great lengths to make the first-time user experience of our home a little bit safer. I bought one of those toilet seat lock things, and my wife made endless fun of me, and then we never used it. He was totally uninterested in the toilet for longer than I wished. There's another sort of lesson here is we really don't want to frustrate our players. We don't want them screaming at the television, and so we think the player is always right. And I was trying to think, like, how do I apply that to parenting? And this is my son, Walt. At breakfast every single morning, he walks up to the drawer, he grabs every spoon. He can't see, he just reaches in and grabs things, and lines them up very carefully next to a cereal bowl, and then takes a bite of cereal and then replaces the spoon back where it came from, and then goes and looks for the right tool for the job the next time and grabs a different spoon. And I think that at first we were like, this is crazy, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you know what? He's enjoying it. And so you have to let the player be right in their demented old heads. And then the other sort of corollary to this is let the Wookiee win. There are some things that we had a lot of trouble with. That is not Walt. That's just some Google image search picture of a kid who's not sleeping. And we were having trouble getting Walt to sleep. And so my wife, looked on the internet and read some books online, and she also discovered the sticker chart. And I was like, we're gonna have this like page, and we're gonna tell him he's gonna get a sticker if he stays in bed. And I was like, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. There is absolutely no way this is going to work. And then it worked. So he got toys, he put stickers on, he decorated them all. I was like, how? Why? This doesn't make any sense. This kid is crazy. And then I realized I do the same thing. So this is League of Legends. And Call of Duty. And then this is Marvel Puzzle Quest. There's a freaking sticker chart on the bottom of the level up page. So anyway, sticker charts. Clearly visualize progress. This is another one of those incredibly stupid ideas that I thought was crazy. There's a book, 1, 2, 3 Magic, which parents have read this book. Yes, maybe, no. Okay. I haven't read it either. My wife explained to me the basic, she gave me the Cliff Notes version. And it is like you're doing something wrong, you just count 1, 2, 3, which everybody does. I also thought there was no way this was going to work, and sure enough, it does. And then I realized first-person shooters, you get shot a little bit. 1, uh-oh, bullets coming from that way. 2, oh my goodness. 3, bang. 4, you get put in timeout. Which is also what happens in League of Legends. So the lesson here is clearly warn of danger when they're going around. And then my fifth and final lesson is to give your children choices, and it works magically. So this is also a screenshot from Marvel Puzzle Quest, and you can pick whether you want Hawkeye or Black Widow. And Walt getting him to brush his teeth was this huge pain in the neck. And then we gave him a choice. Do you want the chicken or the horse? And so literally every night, I think for the past 6 months, we brush your teeth, no, and then I'd walk in and I know he likes the chicken better than the horse. And so I go, okay, well let me get you the horse. And no! And he'd come running in and demand the chicken, and we give the toothbrush and he brushes his teeth. That works well. Thank you.
I love this panel. Next up, we have Les Nelkin. Les has been in the game industry since 1994. He was at Turbine for 6 years on Lord of the Rings Online, Dungeons & Dragons Online, Asheron's Call 1 and 2. Les worked on the Aliens Colonial Marines FPS at Demiurge Studios, and on casual games at Blue Fang. He was a game designer at Kurt Schilling's 38 Studios. And later worked for World Tribe Media on Counter Story Online and MMO for 10 to 14-year-olds. Les holds a master's in architecture and design from the University of Colorado, a BA in philosophy from Brandeis, and has a 21-year-old son. Please welcome Les.
So I'm doing this from kind of the other end of the spectrum. From these guys, we have a grown son. He's 21. He's little. There he's at 3, and there he is today. So he pretty much started out really at 2 or 3, playing with living books, which were interactive titles, and they were good for learning how to use a mouse and getting into reading and that sort of thing. Also, he loved doing things like walking around in mist. And once I let him walk around a first-person shooter that I was playing, but all the dead bodies looked like trash, so you couldn't even tell they're dead bodies. And, and there wasn't even a gun there; it was just a hand. So, just to get him accustomed to it, it was fun. It was fun. And just get him a taste of that stuff, good stuff. He got into Pokemon at 7 years old. And that led to him designing his own card games. And one of his favorites, and the big one, was called, he named Curse, and it had a complicated backstory, and he and his friends played it for like 3.5 years. The actual cards are somewhere in the attic, as I couldn't find them, but these are the closest next thing that he had done around that time. There's a bit of his game collection. One of the games that was very influential for him, which he started playing at 5 years old, was Age of Empires, the Age of Empires series. Basically, Age of Empires, if you haven't played it or don't know about it, it's an RTS. It makes history really exciting, and exciting in a way that I didn't get when I was in school, because you didn't have the whole rise and fall, and tech trajectory and tech tree of civilizations, nor did you get to destroy them. So it wasn't quite as much fun, and so I wasn't as much of a history buff as Jason is from this game. He also played a lot with the level editor. Another thing very influential, in 2001 I started working at Turbine and ended up on the live team for Asheron's Call. Asheron's Call was the 3rd MMO to ever be released, and the live team put out like monthly content and that sort of thing. You can see this little flag that Jason made of it, because this is a game that he literally grew up with. He and his friends would play Asheron's Call in the backyard. And eventually when he started playing it, I didn't let him play it right away. But when he did play it, things like chat text, and they provided an incentive to read, and learning how to type. And literally, he could spell melee combat before he could spell a lot of things. And I still know a lot of devs that don't know how to spell melee. One thing though, and it's a little bit different from maybe what these guys are experiencing, the game context seemed to permeate everything that he did for playtime. So like every imaginary story he would play with or play at was always taking place in the context of a game. For instance, like when I was a kid, I was into Star Trek. So I would play that, walk around and I'm on the Starship Enterprise and I'm having these adventures. The way that he would do something like that with just pretty much all playtime was that, sure, it would be, maybe you're on the Starship Enterprise, but he is actually in a Star Trek game. And so they would be doing things like, leveling up and finding, loot pickups and things like that. And so I was concerned about this because it kind of takes you out of that, or it seemed to me, potentially out of that one step of, you're like one step removed from that imagination. So you're like 3 steps removed from reality, but you're 1 step removed from the full imagination of being fully immersed. So I was kind of concerned about that. And so for us, the way that he was doing it this way, we probably wouldn't have introduced like more gameplay into real life, like trying to do things. But also, he would have been way too stubborn to like, add a game element where he like tried to get him to eat something. He wouldn't have made it. So some of this wouldn't have worked for us, but we're concerned. But during the question and answer, I can tell you that there really wasn't an issue to be concerned about and how this developed. Obviously, games, there's a lot of stuff that they give you creative and school, there's influences that they have and ways of using them for creative projects and school projects. So for instance, once for a school project we had to write a story, we wrote an interactive story with like branching elements and different endings and stuff. He also used, when he was 13 years old, he used this game called The Movies, which is a kind of city building game. And it came with an editor where you could put together movies out of elements in the game. You could essentially script your own movies. And so he used this for a book report. It was a World War II young adult novel. And he spent like over 20 hours working on it. And it was great. And his teacher actually tried to give him points off because she thought it was too violent. And then she realized that like all the violence was actually in the book. So that worked out with that. His first first-person shooters were World War II games. We only let him play the campaigns, just single player, and also let him play Battlefield 1942, but just a single player with bots. Kind of ironically, the violence is sort of one thing, but exposing a kid to all the, racist and nasty chat online, didn't want to do that. But, shooting bots, that was okay. Also not shooting like at people, at avatars that were controlled by people. There was still, reluctance to do that at kind of an earlier age. So he didn't really get to play the standard shooters that way until he was like 14 years old. All this interest in history and the games and everything prompted us going to Normandy and the D-Day beaches, which was a really good, education to have this backup of, okay, this is what the games are like, and this is, how it went. And it also basically said, emphasized the fact there's no replay in real life. So was he educated almost as much by playing games as our school system? We have a really good school system, but I think he was. So what he said was that, I'm quoting him here, games supplemented my education a great deal. Wasn't so much the games, but the interests they piqued, and history being a notable one. These were all things I wouldn't learn until much later in my schooling. They also helped them acquire an understanding of things like business, society, and planning through, some of the SimCity games and games like that. So where's this kind of going right now? Jason grew up wanting to be a game designer, but in his last couple of years in high school decided he wanted to do film production and make films. So now he's in California at a university and he's a film production major. I took this photo yesterday at PAX East of this Space Marine, and I sent it to him by text when I was on the way home. And he sent me this text back. He said, well, that's ironic, because this weekend I'm helping as assistant production designer on a Warhammer short film. So, basically, games can obviously be extremely beneficial to a child's intellectual and imaginative development, potentially their careers too, but still important to play outside.
So in rolling the dice, I get to be your hump speaker. I'm right in the middle. My name is Jason Weiser. I'm the creative director of Yaya Play Games. I teach animation and game production at a few colleges in the area, including the New England Institute of Arts. And I have a 4.5-year-old daughter. Her birth inspired me to shift from console games into design and development for little kids. I got really interested in how game design could make raising our own kid more fun, or at least make more mundane tasks more interesting for her and for us. I started experimenting with goals and tasks and ways to tweak her world, and started writing a blog on parenting and games where I documented the more spectacular failures and the occasional successes. I have free copies of the blog, the Parentzine, printed as booklets for those of you who want at the end of this panel. And all the stories and game ideas in there are available free on our site, so I'm not going to rehash those today. Instead, today I want to talk about something I have not yet written about, how I use my daughter in my professional game development work. She's not just a tester, she is an active, unpaid member of my team. Of the 3 games we have in development this coming summer, one is based on her wanting to learn a musical instrument, another comes from her love of gardening, and the other is inspired by one of her favorite historical stories. And you can probably guess how she contributed to the trailer of our first game, Dino Trucks, which I'm going to show you now.
Hi, this is my daddy's new game. It's called Dino Trucks. You move the excavator with your finger, and you tap it to dig. You also tap it to dump. I found a dinosaur head. I like to get the dump truck like a cowboy. Boom! Pow! Boom! The T-Rex needs a flower hat. My sandcastle is the biggest. Boom! Clash! Whoa! What will you think of?
Thank you, I like her too. It took about an hour to record that 1 minute of audio from her, with tons of retakes and prompting and whole side conversations. But because she and I made the recording itself a game, with goals and achievements, all the many mistakes were as fun as getting the good bits. Failure was encouraging, as it should be, and knowing that I'm making games based on things she likes, she is starting to pitch new ideas to me, most of which revolve around her favorite stuffed doggy. We are, of course, not the first to mine our families here in this panel for game material. Shigeru Miyamoto, the designer of Mario Brothers and everything else, famously generates ideas out of his family's play. When his kids got a dog, he created Nintendogs. I like Yoshi too. When the kids learned to garden, he created Figment. It got so the Nintendo president has at least joked, though I think possibly actually considered, making all of Miyamoto's family's hobbies become company secrets, so no one would guess what Nintendo was working on next. And when I first heard this story, I loved it. It was before my daughter was born. I hadn't even considered how joyous it might actually be to have my kid involved in my creative endeavors. As a creative, as an artist, as an animator, as a writer, and a game designer, it's easy to get lost in the art, to the detriment of important family time. For me, writing the blog, involving her in production, all helps me to keep my focus where I want it, on her. At 4.5, my daughter is already exhibiting signs of teenagerdom. This morning, instead of asking for yogurt, she asked for yo. So I expect when I'm still asking her to narrate trailers at 9 years old, I will get audio recordings like, "Oh God, fine, this is my dad's new game. He's making me say this, play it or don't, I'm going back to my room." But for now, she loves it. When I pull an all-nighter, she wakes up in the morning and climbs into my chair with me and starts recording stories about what her favorite stuffed doggy did all night. She has grown up with the gamer's excitement about new things and challenges, and I get to spend much of my professional time thinking about how she can be involved, which is heaven. So I suppose my one takeaway today is to suggest finding ways to turn what you need to do in the house or out in the world into a game that can involve your kids. Thank you. Next up, we have a special duo. Eric is professor and director of the Scheller Teacher Education Program and the MIT Education Arcade, where his research focuses on the development and use of computer games and simulations for building understandings of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. He's the co-author of the books Adventures in Modeling and The More We Know, and author of Augmented Learning. He's also the co-founder and president of the nonprofit Learning Games Network and has 2 kids aged 7 and 10, one of whom is here with us today as a panelist. I'm also going to introduce Oren. Oren Klopfer is a 5th grade student and avid gamer across multiple platforms, including Minecraft, Clash of Clans, WoW, Skylanders, Super Mario 3D World, and Dragon Veil. I don't have the time to play that many games, I'm jealous. We described him in the program as a victim of game-oriented parenting, but he has begun engaging in game development already, so we shall see who gets the last laugh. Please welcome the Klopfers.
So thanks. This will be a talk in 2 parts. I'll give my first part here. But I do want to say that while I have one of my 2 kids with me here, Oren, and his sister there, Maya, is equally as much of a gamer, and I'll mention some of the intersections with her as well as I go on. Some of my early experiences with gaming with my kids were actually with making my own games, and these were not meant to be done for anything except for that oftentimes when I'm working on new tools, I like to learn those new tools myself. And so I get a receptive audience for people who will play the games that I actually make. And so these are a couple of games I made for them. And inside these games are their favorite characters. In the upper left-hand corner, you may not recognize him, but that's Erner the Penguin. That was named by my kids at one point. And they're just an opportunity for me to exercise my own skills and be able to have my kids give me feedback on those. And the kids still play these games many years later, even though no one else in the world has. I think the first time my kids actually became aware of the connection between me and gaming and them and gaming was when Oren here was a bit younger and playing Club Penguin, and he had done something wrong, and so his punishment was that he wouldn't be able to play Club Penguin for the rest of the day. And he said to me, "But Dad, you don't understand. Us kids today, we communicate through games." And I said to him, "For a lot of your friends, they can say that to their parents. You cannot say to your parents that they don't understand games." But we've used games a lot to learn different kinds of lessons. As you heard in Oren's bio, he plays a lot of Minecraft. We have a small server that we run in our house. And actually we occasionally invite some other people onto this server. And in fact, we invited somebody else from the games community, one of her kids, onto our server. And her daughter had built these wonderful palaces in the world, a fire palace, a water palace, and an earth palace. And she was very proud of these. And there was another guy on the server, and he had showed her all around. And a little while later, it looked sort of like this. Someone had gotten, one of the people we had let on, we whitelist everybody who gets on, one of the people who had gotten on had decided that he had enough of the water palace and the fire palace and the earth palace and blew them up. And along with a lot of other things. But it's a safer place. Obviously these kinds of things happen in real life too. But in the context of Minecraft, you don't have to react immediately. It's a chance for us to discuss what should happen to this person. Obviously we should probably ban them, but should we have a discussion with them? Should that discussion be online or face-to-face? What should be the consequences of this? And since then, sometimes it's smaller things, but it's an opportunity to sort of reflect on the reaction and be able to discuss that reaction with your kids before they actually react. However, sometimes it takes twice to learn these lessons. This is a rebuilt server. And another slightly more creative hack was someone had set off a set of command blocks with redstone and lots of explosives and had blown up lots of things, including the aforementioned Maya's tower, Weather Watcher Tower. And I think that was actually even a more impactful experience than the previous one, because not only had it impacted us, everybody in the server, but had it specifically made my daughter very upset. And I think that was another opportunity for us to reflect on what had happened here and what should the consequences be. She's happy again. And playing Minecraft again. I'll say that one thing that's been interesting is we have to expect the unexpected within this world. So Oren, when he was a little bit younger, he was allowed to watch me play Minecraft, but World of Warcraft, but not actually play World of Warcraft. And one day we were playing during Valentine's Day, and of course the world looks like this, and you see love potions going around, and he was flabbergasted that this was the same world that he had seen me sort of walking around and throwing spells at people. So it's really to expect the unexpected. But World of Warcraft has also thrown me a loop as well. As a parent, now they're a little bit older, and so I do play with them a little bit. And so my daughter and I were playing, we were Blood Elves in the Silver Moon City, and I uttered a line that I never thought that I would utter in my life, which was, "Maya, stop killing the cats and get over in here and help Daddy kill this creature." Totally with a straight face. I was angry, killing the cats, get over here, help me kill this thing. So the last thing, and this should be maybe perhaps a little obvious, is that, of course, together working on this, that Oren has learned the ultimate craft of making a PowerPoint presentation and presenting in front of an audience, which he will now do.
Hello. So I really like the game Minecraft, and recently I've been using stuff with wires in it, and there's these command blocks which help me make commands, which I have been using to teleport people places so that we can have an expanded world. There was one thing that when we played WoW, my dad had this special spell where you could turn characters into sheep. So they would be easier to kill. So we thought that in Minecraft, sometimes it would be easier to kill creepers if we could also turn them into sheep. And this is a line of code that we have. So yeah. And then I've been wanting to make a game kind of like simulation, Clash of Clans, Dragon Veil. So what we've been doing is that I drew the pictures and we're what I call cartoonizing them so that they can look like they're in a real game.
That was awesome. Thank you both. Chris Foster has been designing games for nearly 20 years. Thank you. Including 9 Turbine, where he was lead content designer for the Lord of the Rings Online, and UI designer, live lead designer for Asheron's Call. Since then, he's been at Harmonix Music Systems, where he was lead designer for the Beatles rock band and project director for Green Day rock band, and is now on the design team for Fantasia Music Evolved. Chris has 2 kids, age 5 and 3. Please welcome Chris Foster.
Tough act to follow. Let me start by saying that I have 2 great kids with my wife, Ian and Alyssa, aged 5 and 3, as you recently heard. But this talk is going to be mostly about Ian, because he's 5 and he's older, which means I made most of my mistakes with him first. So there are some people in this world who have a natural sense of what is and is not age appropriate. I am not one of those people. And so when we had Ian, our son, I think one of the things I was most excited about is like, oh wow, I'm going to get to share all the really cool cultural things that I love with him. Like, I can't wait till he's like 3 or 4 and then we can watch Star Wars together. To which my wife said, no. And so we had a long talk, and you sort of forget, like, the things we enjoy are kind of like incredibly violent, even if, they're not that bloody. So, okay, I get this, I'm learning, I'm growing, experience. Wait, Lego makes a Star Wars game. Lego's games, they're totally kid-friendly. They're not bloody at all, they'll be great. You forget that these games are also incredibly violent. And I love incredibly violent, don't get me wrong, and I know that my kid in a few years will, but that's something that, at an early age, you don't want them replicating, you don't want them, not being able to process and just think is like awesome to do. But there's something slightly more fundamental that is kind of one of the points I wanted to get across. Things that we love, a lot of things we love, are these clashes between good and evil, between light and darkness. And the thing to remember with kids, particularly very young kids, is they come into this world and they don't really have a sense of They don't necessarily even have a sense of the differences between good and evil. I mean, these kids, they might be obsessed with Darth Vader as an action figure. You might even give them a name of being a bad guy. But they don't know what that means. And that's an incredible thing. That's a rare moment. Kids are born into this world, they're innocent. That innocence will go away. It will be taken from them. And that's okay. They'll grow into that wider world. They'll understand what's going on. But there's a period of time where they don't have that. And the world is pretty sweet. And I guess one of the two pieces of advice I have for you is, don't rush them out of time. Just remember that. You'll always have time to share the things you love with them. But be selective with what you share up front. So my second point is about this drawing. So Ian, and this was about 6 months ago, shows me this drawing. And he goes and he explains in detail what's going on, that the cannon is shooting the rocket, and the cannon shot off one of its nozzles. Then he goes on to say, well, if it shoots it again, the other nozzle will fall off. And if he shoots it again, the nose cone will fall off. And if he shoots it again, the windows will break. He's basically spec'd a game feature and he doesn't know it. Or maybe he does and he's just manipulating it. But what was amazing at the time, I'm a designer, I've been doing this for about 20 years. And I sort of Peter Principled up into management multiple times in my career, which means there's aspect of doing game development and design that I don't have as much experience with as I want. I've been part of large teams and that work gets distributed. This is a Google image search for team. I love Google image search. I wanted to learn how to do something entirely on my own in Unity. Get a sense of like owning every decision and see what I get from that. This diagram was interesting to me and it was kind of a gift because there are a lot of game ideas you get that are either really straightforward and you don't know what to do with them, or they're really vague and mysterious and you have no idea how to start with them. But this was a game that I could understand. This is a game I could actually see, like the successive series of finish lines to build a thing that would be fun. So maybe I thought this would be my game, or rather this would be our game. And what I've learned is that kids are really good for unpaid art labor. They draw sprites without getting frustrated. You can turn those in Photoshop or get into usable game assets. That age of 4 is probably not a good idea for them doing your typefaces. But it can be pretty fun. And they also are really good as unpaid voiceover talent.
Do you have more Bing Bing games? I could really use those for something else.
Bing, bing, bing. Bing, bing, bing. What's higher than bing, bing, bing. Bing, bing, bing.
So Ian and I are really proud of this thing we're doing together. We're doing it largely for fun, but I thought it would be cool to cut together a little teaser trailer of what our game is.
Help! Help! Save
Ian takes this really seriously. This is a bedtime conversation we had. He's my project lead. He watches over deadlines. He wants to make sure we get the game just right. He keeps trying to creep features into the game. I've told him that the custom ship creator will not ship in the initial release. That was another bedtime conversation. Having his awareness of just what it takes to make a game, having his awareness of polish, of completion, the pride that he feels in this, these are all wonderful things. I think we will find a way to sell this someday, because I think it's kind of fun, or free to play, and then find some way to make money. I'll talk to Al later about that. But I guess the thing, if I have some advice for you, there are many ways to experience the things you love and share them with people. Games, it's actually easier than ever before to make games. Unity is great. Game Maker is amazing as a visual programming language built right in. So I'd say, if you have an opportunity, if you're interested in making games or have any experience with it, find a small idea, clone Pac-Man, clone Asteroids, do something, and share it with your kids. Have them customize the look, the sound. There's just nothing more fun than that. That's good stuff. Thank you.
I've been geeking out for about 3 months at the idea of sharing a stage with all these amazing people. So we've got a little bit more than 10 or 15, about 10 or 12 minutes. Do we have any questions?
I have a question. You said you had a game coming out that was based on your daughter wanting to learn music. So, as a developer, I'm actually interested in working on games to teach music. So, can you talk about that for a moment?
Sure. So we are not a musical family, so this game is going to be as much to teach me about music as it is about her. But we're looking for ways, just like the Dino Trucks game, that there's open play, open exploration. It's not very authoritarian in the way it's directed. Irena talked about that as well, about giving kids a chance to come up with their own way of playing through something. So there's feedback, there's light goals, there's awesomeness in there, enjoyment of it hopefully, but there isn't a, if you do it wrong, it breaks, or it tells you have to go back to the beginning.
I have a 3-year-old son. Mic on? Can you hear me? I have a 3-year-old son, and he just recently started to watch me playing games. He wants to play video games with me. I'm concerned about it a little bit because I'm concerned it's going to affect his imagination and his play skills. And just kind of affect him as a person. So I want to get him involved in the right games. So I'm trying to get him involved in mobile games, educational games, but he wants to play the games I'm playing. He wants to play, the first-person shooters. He sees me moving around. They look cool, explosions. So a little bit concerned about that. What kind of games, he wants to be involved, so I want to get him involved in games. What kind of games should I introduce him to outside of, educational touch games that he doesn't want to play?
I've had some experience with this, and it's interesting. Pac-Man is actually really fun. The Pac-Man Championship editions, like I have kids in the bleachers just like jumping and bouncing up and down as you're going into that game. It's intense, but it's not violent. Minecraft is a great one to watch. I've been cruise directed to build house after roller coaster when my kid was like 3 and 4. The Mario ones were an interesting experience for me, like because they're a little violent, but they're not bloody and they can be fun. But what I did learn is that if you're good at the 3D games and bad at the 2D games, do not play the 2D games with your kids because you're constantly trying to not teach them new words as you play. So find things that are fun that you're good at, and I don't think.
Also,
sorry. I would just add that maybe play a different game in front of him. Wait till he's in bed and then play your games.
I think I was
the
more.
big trick is to make sure that you're doing stuff that as a parent that it's not just to entertain us, and we want to entertain ourselves when we have to, but also maybe find other stuff that so that he doesn't watch that stuff all the time.
I think what I was more trying to ask is for those of you that have older children that have been playing games for a while, is them playing games at such an early age okay? How does that affect them? Do they grow up to be,
It totally depends on the game,
And it depends on the
first-person
kid,
shooters.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend of mine with a 4-year-old, and he's a game developer. He works at Turbine, and he's working on Infinite Crisis. His 4-year-old son will sit there and play the Lego Marvel game himself, and he's actually gotten really good with his hand-eye coordination, and he can control and actively participate in quests. He can't read them, but he has his older brother read them for him. So it really depends on the kid themselves. But my 4-year-old, he just runs into walls. He just wants me to turn on Iron Man, and he's just going to shoot the repulsor rays over and over. So it really depends on the kid and where they are, and just being in tune with your kid and his development.
And I think with anything like this, just the idea of screen time, just having time limits on things, will mean that it's going to be in proportion with other aspects of living and fun, and that will help a lot.
Good, thank you.
I mean, I'll add a little bit. I think having stuff on moderation is always good. I think that in terms of what your own kids are interested in, certainly they like to see play whatever you're playing. But I think that in general, kids have a very, very wide breadth of what they can find interesting. I think, in fact, that's probably true of a lot of people that are not just kids. And so, if you expose them to lots of other kinds of games, they'll be interested in those kinds of games as well.
So my daughter is much younger than the rest of your kids. She's just about 6.5 months, but she's already grabbing at phones, grabbing at iPads. She's figured out, if she hits it, the screen moves. I wonder if this is something that we should be encouraging or not.
I can speak a little bit to that. A good friend of mine in the game industry, I'm just going to say Scott, pretty much put the iPad in the crib with his son, and his kid is awesome. My kid, we didn't have her touch a screen. She didn't see TV until she was after 4 years old. So it's, I think, more about your preference than it is necessarily about the kid. There's research that says severely limit till 2 years old. I don't think anybody has definitively said this does what to the brain.
Well, the one thing I'll just add to that, there has been research showing that the idea of screens, it's like a cat. If you put a cat in front of like a CNN ticker, they'll keep looking for the end of the screen and where that ticker is going. Kids don't necessarily, like they have you want them to develop their full range of vision, and being limited into a screen in that focus can actually affect their visual cortex. So I would kind of limit the amount of exposure to a smaller screen. I think actually a television is better in that case because it can actually fill their entire field of vision. But again, it's about limits and making sure that other things are stimulating them.
Yeah, we don't stick her in front of it and leave her there. It's like, if I pull my phone and check a quick email, she'll swipe at it quickly. Or we have an iPad with a Fisher Price cover on it that she'll, we have a Fisher Price game on it that she'll touch and shapes up here. But it's very, very limited, a couple minutes here and there. It's not like...
Yeah, it's
not the baby
fine.
show.
I mean, my daughter pretty much grew up with my iPhone. When she was cranky, we have like this baby rattle game, and she could push it and makes like little cow and chicken noises. And it's actually very entertaining because you have this idea of interaction, and to me that's actually valuable for the future because they're not living in a world where some philosophies come at it with don't give them any screen time, but they're going to have to deal with screens their entire lives. So that will just give them one step ahead when they're actually getting to the idea that screens can actually talk back at you.
Just put her in an Oculus and then the supervision.
We don't have kid size yet. Thank you.
Say that we may not know yet what exactly these things do, so limiting them I think is a really good idea.
Thanks.
Hello. So I have a 6-year-old son who is very obsessed with video games. His father, very PC, console games. I am more analog, D&D. So what we try to do is we try to kind of have our time, some of it with Minecraft and some Super Mario 3D World, and then we try to do my, Munchkin and things like that. He is totally not into analog at all, but he loves the Minecraft and especially Super Mario 3D World. So my question is, he has gotten to this point in his life where he is super obsessed. I woke up Friday morning at 4 in the morning. He is downstairs playing Super Mario 3D World. I am very concerned that he doesn't understand that there is screen time. We have a 30-minute rule and whatnot. I've tried charts. I've tried, be in the bed, the 1, 2, 3. I am not the fun mom. So is this something that you think that he might grow out of if we keep trying, we give him the screen time and things? Have anybody else ever experienced that with their children?
I still haven't grown out of it.
I guess my answer is null and void then.
Yeah, it's tough. Like kids, my oldest is 5, and there's definitely spikes of rebelliousness up and down. So maybe in some way they won't grow out of it, but it'll shift over time. I mean, the only thing that we've done in cases like that is think about consequences. Like that game should not be around. If you're concerned with them playing in the morning, then if you catch it, then that game could go away for a day or two. And the thing with 1, 2, 3 is that there's that one there's the timeout, there's the thing there, and that's what they don't want. But I think we've regularly taken toys away and things like that, and that can quell it for a bit, and also set up the idea that this is a thing they cannot do anymore.
There's also the complete opposite approach of let him just dive into it and do that deep dive because he will get sick of it eventually. The kind of playful parenting approach would be to allow him to explore because it's an active interest, and there are ways that he could learn that we're not maybe necessarily seeing at surface level, but we're kind of caught up in the idea of screen time is bad. But there is still value. There's value in screen time and watching television. There's narratives. You learn about people and dynamics. It may be Hollywood narratives, but still, there is something there that he can glean from it and walk away from, and then move on to the next thing.
Let's say get him to play Age of Empires.
That's our
all games teach things, but you'll learn more from other games than say Mario.
In the analog space, there are a few games I've had luck with, like both Carcassonne, well actually it's about to be reprinted. Carcassonne has a kid's version. Catan has a kid's version. For a kid your age, there's a game called Rampage, which is a very physical board game, but is like in the style of Euro games. So there might be an opportunity to find a game that sort of he might be more naturally interested in. That could be a gateway to a lot of the other things you enjoy.
Yeah, so like something like Punchkin might be a little bit less age appropriate, and finding things that are more his level that he can engage in. You know, when my son was 3, we started him with Candyland, and it's really, really boring and not really random at all. There's no skill, but he was like, I got a double purple. They can get excited about things that are a little bit simpler.
Some of the bridge to the analog can also happen through iPad versions of board games, which sometimes I wonder why they exist, but they can be sort of that bridge between the digital and the analog.
Okay, last question, I think.
Yeah.
So I was raised on the Sci-Fi Channel, Silent Hill, very violent video games, and I guess I've kind of wondered how that's going to translate for when I become a parent one day. And I know every kid is completely different, but how do you decide as your kids get older what is age appropriate?
Just to start on the littlest kids, here's the direct effect of violence I've seen. So when my son was 2, he loves superheroes, so we let him watch Superhero Squad because we're like, Marvel, obviously kiddie, hilarious, well written, fantastic show. What happened was he just started, kids like to act out what they see. They model. That's why, we have to model good behavior for them to reflect back at us. The same thing happens with seeing it on television. They see violence modeled on TV. They act it out, and the 2-year-old ends up the punching bag. So it's really a balance between finding what you want your kid to be copying, because all of them are mimics. They're sponges and mimics. So that's where you set your own limit.
Yeah, I think one thing that we sort of have, my wife and I have talked about it, kids are going to learn about this stuff often in school, often from other kids, often from experience, and in some ways, our approach is to not rush it, and basically we know at a certain point they're going to be more comfortable with these concepts, they're going to come home playing superheroes in certain ways. Hopefully school's helping to contextualize that, you can, and then all that stuff will come in over time. But I think the point of mimicry and being careful in that point, when they don't have the ability to contextualize it, is a really useful bar set way to think about it.
There was a time when there were no video games, and so as generations that grow up with them, I think that the bar is getting either lowered or made higher in terms of that it's okay to I played this, and so I really think it's okay for my kid to play it, and then I think that things do seem to start earlier and earlier and earlier, but yeah, some things just aren't completely appropriate. So.
And with that, if we can have one last round of applause for these amazing panelists. So we are going to go outside if you'd like to talk with us further. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a very happy PAX.